Hello.
Click. And now we should be recording. So we're going to go into designs, and I'll see if I can get this to open up. It looks like it's still loading. Loading. I hope I don't need to go back all the way back out, and yet maybe I do.
I was having problems before. It kept saying loading error and all kinds of.
I'll tell you, I have some things open here that have been open for a while, and they may need to be refreshed. I'm guessing they just need to be refreshed. Here we go. Yeah, see, that's it. The things, screens that have been open for a while sometimes just need to be reopened. You have to,
Okay.
oh golly.
That's what I got.
No, so I had not seen this. This is something that just popped up within the last 24 hours. And I won't be able to show you designs because you have to, I saw the fix on this, but I hadn't experienced it, so I didn't do the fix. But it's related to Chrome, and it's some kind of an update that Chrome did. And so there you have to go back to your settings, your Chrome settings. Let me see if I can do this here.
That happened to me too.
I'm not sure if I can, because I remember what it told me to, but I don't remember where I have to go to do that.
Debbie, Danny was having issues with the system as well. That's why she canceled the previous session.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, she was supposed to be at 2.
Yeah.
Well, I know the problem. I didn't pay enough attention to the solution. So it is.
That's happened with me yesterday, but after a while, it started to work again.
I think it's here. I think it's in pop-ups and redirects. No, good golly. That's not it. It should come up for KW agent. Yes, I want to reset permissions for KW agent. And let's see if this takes us. All right, I'm just going to see if that did it. It's resetting permissions. Let's see if we go there. We'll try one time and see if this works. And if not, we'll just move on to the other things, and I will have that fixed by the time we meet tomorrow.
Are you doing 3 o'clock again tomorrow?
No, tomorrow is 11.
Oh,
So
okay.
it looks like for that I'll have to do I'll have to get the fix, and I will record it for you so that if you bump into that, you'll know what to do, and then we'll do the designs then. I'm so sorry I couldn't show you that today, but okay, so here we go. We're going to look at creating a landing page, and so the two purposes that we talked about last week were the digital brochure, which is a landing page, and the other thing is the registration for open house, which is a landing page. You access landing pages on the consumer applet, which is the last one down here. And when you open that, this is the page that you land on. So landing pages, agent site pages, which are here. These are any agent site pages that you have updated on your website. And this is actually where we're going to do featured homes as well. The guide builder is something that we're going to start talking about in a couple of weeks, probably after family reunion. But did you see I went over here to site and app settings? And then you go here to featured listings.
Wait, so what did you hit first? Landing page, then,
I'm on the landing page, which is down here,
okay,
right? And then I went over to site and app settings. You see that? And then you click on featured listings. And here's where you can select the listings that you want to feature. Now, what I recommend is if you're borrowing listings from somebody else, ask their permission. Most likely they're going to say, okay, you know?
Of course.
But then you click on select listings
oh,
and you go to all listings. And does anybody on the call today have a listing that I can look up? It has to be an active listing. Who has an active listing I can look up?
Somebody.
Anybody?
Yep,
Anybody?
I have one, 24, I'm sorry, not 24, 28 Bulkley Avenue North.
Oakley, O-A-K?
No, B as in boy, U-L-K, L-E-Y,
Buckley.
Avenue North.
Bulkley.
Yeah.
North?
Mhm.
And what town is that in?
That's in Westport.
Well,
Seems like it's just showing
there
your.
it is.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, scroll down. There it is. Do y'all see that? It pops up. So now I'm going to go select. Done.
There, maybe.
And you see it? It added to my list. And what I'm going to do, is it okay with you if I keep this on my website? Do I have your permission?
Yes, you do.
Okay, I'm going to move it to the top. And then I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to say save changes. That's all there is to it. Do I need to go back and review any of that for anybody?
There, Debbie. On my end only shows my listing. I cannot go to all.
Okay,
listings.
so what, you have to go to all listings.
Yeah, it doesn't allow me to scroll like to select that.
Me too.
Well, watch. Now, are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah, I did the same thing that you did.
I'm stuck in only mine.
Yes,
Select. Down and that arrow doesn't give you all listings.
it doesn't.
No.
Okay, so what I'm going to suggest is clear your cache. And you know how to do that, right? Do that, what I started out with the little lock up here in the browser bar. Clear your cache, go site settings. And then over here, clear all data, right here. And I'm going to do it again. Clear all data. And then do a refresh. And then try it again.
Sorry, where did you go? Clear all data? Where was that?
It's in the URL. It's a Chrome setting.
Right.
So you want to clear the data in with the little lock here.
Right.
Click on that, go all the way down, settings, and then clear the setting data. And then do a refresh and try again. And it should open up all of the listings. There shouldn't be any reason you can't access that. Okay. So that is done. Now, what I'm going to show you is on the actual website. Instantly, there's no delay on this. There's the site, right? And there are my featured homes. And what's the first featured home that pops up?
That one.
Brand new. And then you have your registration form here. And I will repeat, I am getting leads directly from that page because because I've got featured homes there and people are looking at it and they're actually filling this out. So work on that. And if you continue to have trouble,
Oh, maybe it's because it's on our
Yeah, I'm
homepage.
having trouble with mine. It's very slow and it doesn't show me the featured listings.
so I
Mine
said,
does, yeah, mine doesn't show the featured listings either. It says I have none. So
well, because you haven't set them up.
that's what I figured, but I thought it would show like others. No?
You have to set this up. This does not
Okay.
feed automatically. This is something that you must set up.
Okay.
So do that. And here's the other thing about it. You'll need also to put it on your calendar and edit it every couple of weeks.
Okay.
Because things change and you really need to keep it fresh. For example, all of these houses, I mean, I can look at all of them, but they're all in contract.
Oh, my whole page just went blank.
Well, that I can't help you with.
It's not your fault. Oh, I think I lost my buyer's presentation. Help.
Oh, no, if you push that save button, you said you had pushed the save
I
button.
did hit the save button. Yes.
I think that'll be okay. Yeah.
Okay.
What was that address again? I'm going to try to put it in.
28 Bulkley, Bulkley Avenue North, and scroll down when you put that in. Just scroll down because it's probably popping up for you.
That'll work. I know.
All right. So that was not really on the agenda, but let's now go back to. We'll go back to landing pages. And I'll show you some of the possibilities of the landing pages. We'll start with the most simple, which is what I call a generic public open house registration. And this is already pre-made. I'll show you how to make it, but it's the easiest thing in the world. It only has 2 blocks. It doesn't have anything more than 2 blocks. It has your header. And I made this generic so we can use it for anything. And it just says, please sign in for our seller. So how did I do that? Create a new landing page. You go here to create a new page. Oh, who's making noise there? Create it as a landing page. You have 2 choices. This is a page that would go on that website that we were looking at. And you're making standalone pages right now. So we're going to create that page. And it will just come up with widgets for you to include. And these are all of your choices. You have, I don't know why they don't put branded header first. The branded header, that's what you usually put in the top slot. Agent branding is about you. I always, if I put that on a page, I put it down toward the bottom. A lead form, that's what you use to get, we've got somebody coming in here. A lead form is what you're going to use to get people to register. The legal footer, if I'm doing a brochure, especially something like that, I put the legal footer in as well. listing, here's where, just like we just pulled up that featured listing, you can pull up any listing that you want. I may make I'll make a brochure around the Bulkley listing, just to show you how easy that is. Market Snap, you can create a neighborhood snapshot around where the listing is if you want. And then your local expert gives you, I don't remember the difference between agent branding and local expert. It's similar. And then the last, no, it's not the last block. Another block is video. You can pop a video on this landing page. And then they have testimonial capture and a quick block for downloading your app to encourage people to use your app. So all of those things, I certainly would not use all of those things in one.
To the Department of Labor. Bienvenido al Departamento de Trabajo.
You want to focus on your purpose, right? So the first thing we're going to do is this registration page. So I take the branded header, and here you drag and drop, just like that. And then I'm going to take the lead form and I'm going to drag and drop underneath. Now, with 3 exceptions, I'm done. I'm just going to make a couple of changes in the words. I'm going to change the title up here because that's just helpful. I'm going to just call this registration page. And I'll call it a test.
Okay, so we decided we're having
Somebody's
chicken
talking.
wings.
Somebody's talking. Who's talking? I'm trying to find you. So we changed the title. You saw how I did that, right? And now we go down here to configure widgets. I'm going to close that. Configure widgets. The screen that comes up shows you where you can, what you can edit. And I'm going to put a header here. When I do the open house, I always say, please sign in for our seller. You can put anything you want. That's what I put in that top. And then I double check that the data is correct. And it is. I save and apply. And then I go to the lead form, and here's how you do that. You have to move page by page through the fields that you've added to the form right here. So I'm going to field number 2. And it says, interested? Let's talk. Actually, I did this backwards. So I'm going to go back. See, I made a mistake. It doesn't matter. Oh my goodness. Except I don't want to go there. Oh my goodness. Here we are. What I want to do is change the words here. I want this header to say, welcome to our open house. That's fine. That's what I want that to say. And then on the second page, I want it to say, please sign in for our seller. Save that and apply. Here's the thing. I would keep this one that clean. I wouldn't put anything else on here, because what you're going to do, and let me go in here and see if I can find my public open house. Let's see if this is gonna be, no, that's not gonna be it. Virtual. It may be here. That's that. Ugh. Let's go. If I have to, I'll show you something just on the screen. Oh my goodness, that's not what I want. Let's see if I can find it here. I'm finding everything else, not what I want. Sorry. Let's see if it might be in here. No pictures. Okay, I give. I will show you from here. I think I will. So we just have a Word doc, and I'm hoping that you're able to see this. Can you see this sort of, kind of? Oops.
Yep.
Okay, so it's just a Word doc that has a picture of the house and then has a short paragraph that says, the door, if the door is locked, I'm with somebody, text me.
Debbie, I can't see what,
Okay, I'll send it to you, Mary. It
okay,
says,
thanks.
thank you for coming to our open house. If the door is locked, I am currently showing the home. Please text me to let me know you're here, my phone number, and enjoy a tour of the outdoor space. I will respond via text.
Oh, I can't
when I
see it either. It's not, I think you need to share the screen again.
It's not a screen. It
Yeah.
is. Just register, you just need to share the screen.
Okay, are you seeing my registration form now?
Yes.
Okay, so when they text me, I then have a link to this form. And my link, remember the whole thing with bit.ly? Do you remember this?
No.
So bit.ly.com is a URL shortener. It makes it very easy for you to share. What you've created is the landing page is just a URL, right?
Mhm.
So here I have created, there it is.
For your KW app link.
Say it again.
Can you use Bitly for your KW app?
You can use it for anything that's a regular old URL. I make these like 2 a day practically. Can you see this over here? It says Debbie OPOH sign in. And the URL is bit.ly. I'm going to copy this and I'll put it up here in the, I'll save that because I want to, okay, there it is. Can you see it? bit.ly/DEBI, capital P, lower O, capital H, capital S, sign in, and the in is capitalized. I put that in my phone in notes. So I have,
Kevin,
I
I'm looking for Kevin.
Gee,
oh my
Where he
goodness,
is.
we
All
need
right.
to mute ourselves unless we have to ask a question.
everybody should be muted. So I know this is not easy to see. I can see let's see if it gets closer, if it gets better. Is it better? A little bit better. Can you see the words?
Yes.
So I keep a list of these bit.ly URLs, and then I just copy and paste it when they text me. when that URL goes to, let me just go. I'll just do this one. Whoops. All right. I go copy. And then somebody give me let me see, who's on here that I have you in my phone. Mary, do you have your phone there? Mary Russo.
Yes, yeah.
Here it
I
comes.
do. Okay, Debbie.
Oh, you know what? That's not, that's lovely. It's lovely what I just sent you, but that's not the
That's not the one.
registration. That's not the registration. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we'll try this again, Mary.
Okay.
Mary. I'm going to do here, bit.ly / Debbie O. No, Debbie POH sign in. See, this is why you really want to copy it. It keeps wanting to correct things. Here we come. It's coming. Okay, now that is not quite correct. So it needs to be sign in. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Now look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Who else wants this?
Cool. That's cool. Can you see
All right,
it?
right. Hold it up, and it's right on your phone. And then what do you have to do?
You have to put your name in. Let's see if I can do it.
Okay, so whoever texts me, well, I don't have you in my phone, Alice. I will put my cell phone in the chat. You can text me and I will send you that link after we're done. All right, just so you can experience it. Is that a deal?
Yep, sounds good.
Yes.
Work? Okay, and I'm going to go, where's
These pictures drive me nuts, Deb. I can never see this stuff.
on the thing? I know.
Verify, you know, pictures of traffic lights.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
203, here we go. Okay. So just text me and I will forward that to you guys. All right.
So after I did that, Debbie, this is what I'm supposed to see. I'm getting what I'm supposed to see.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Okay. And then, so I'm going to go to, I'm going to go back to command here, agent. And I'm going to see if now I actually have Mary in my command, but let's see if that showed up, that she registered with me. Okay, and this is Russo. And come on. I know you're in here.
Maybe you just have me under Mary?
No.
No.
It was the loading process. It just wasn't loading properly. Okay, so there's Mary. And what I want to see is if, that's interesting. Okay, let's look here very quickly and see if she gets registered as a lead. No, I don't see that yet. But what should happen, it may not be happening because she's already in my database. What happens is anybody who registers shows up here on your homepage as a new lead. And do you see how it says it came from a KW landing page? That's the registration. I think it didn't happen, Mary, because you're already in there.
Okay.
I will just do a quick refresh, but I have a feeling that's the situation. It's not a new lead. But that's where that will show up for anybody who's coming into your open houses. So I know that was a little jerky. Does anybody have any questions about that step-by-step process? And you end up with something that looks just like that.
I guess, Debbie, excuse me, I'm confused with the bit.ly link.
So here's the thing. In order to get to this page, you would need, do you see what that link that's in the URL? In the browser?
Right.
You would need a link that was that long.
Okay.
So what you do with the bit.ly link is make it easier to manipulate. It just makes it
How did you do that? I mean, I guess I missed.
How did I create it? So I took this link. So I'm going to go back to the overview page.
Okay.
Yes, leave that page. And go back here to the landing pages. When you create a page, before you publish it, you see how long this is?
Yes.
You can change the URL.
Okay, from the 3 dots. Okay.
So you can make that shorter. I call this DKO. It has to be all together. Registration page. Done. Whatever you want to call it, something short that's recognizable. Whatever you've done with that, you copy this URL, copy it, take it to bit.ly, create, paste the long URL in this box, and then call it whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call this DKOPOH because I don't have that. And then you go there. And now to get back to this page, whatever this page is, to get back to this page, all I have to do is put in BIT, the bit.ly, which is this. So it's short, so it's easy. So it's something that you can remember, you know, it makes it easy.
Is that in there already, the bit.ly, or is that something I have to download?
You go, look, you know, you don't download anything, you just go to the bit.ly site.
Okay.
So you just go bit.ly.com.
Okay.
It's actually an app, but you can do it on your laptop.
Okay.
bit.ly.com, and it shortens those links.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry, never heard of it before.
Yeah, so that's a huge tip. Because you can have a whole list of short links that you can then share very easily.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about that registration page?
No, Debbie, but I do have a couple questions about command, if we could go over. It's short questions.
Okay, if it's not landing pages, I may ask you to save it for tomorrow, but tell me what it is, John.
Oh yeah, it's so I wanted to know from the KW app, I finally figured out how you could see on the timeline properties viewed, but I was wondering because I had my mom favorite some properties, and I noticed that I didn't see the properties she favorited. I just saw all the properties that she clicked on. Big difference there, because you could just look at a property and not be that interested. But if you favorite it, it doesn't pop up the same.
Okay, well, let's talk about that tomorrow.
Let's do it.
Okay.
And also, I wanted to know if you could set some sort of like auto assign people to smart plans, like as soon as you put them in your database, or do you have to manually each person you put into your database assign them to a smart plan?
If I can, I'll show you that today. I want to show you the digital brochure before we finish, and we have about 20 minutes. So I can show you that as well. That's related to tags, John. But I'll show you how that is auto launch. And that's even getting more sophisticated. It's not quite there yet, but I think by the end of next week, we're going to have another way to auto launch smart plans. It's very cool. Smart plans. Okay, I will show you that. All right, I'm going to show you any other questions on registration for public open house and the process for that. Okay, I'm going to, did I walk you through this? I don't think that I did. Walk you through a digital brochure. And I got very tired of refilling the sign-in packages with brochures because as many brochures as you leave there, they get taken away. So I went to a bit.ly link and I put a frame up with a picture of the house and a little thing that says, use this link for the digital brochure. And it's just a bit.ly. So it's basically bit.ly / and then the address, 55 New Street LP. I said landing page. You can put again, you see you have the agent branded header. You have the listing. This is all listing as it comes off the MLS with all of the photos. And you can manage that best here. Takes you through all of the photos. Oops. And the details and a map. And then I added a video. If you have a video, and you can make your own video. This doesn't have to cost you anything, except I always do recommend you have public or professional photos taken.
Can you add a Matterport video to it?
You cannot add a Matterport. No, not here, because it's a video. So if you wanted to do a Matterport, and I haven't perfected this takes a little practice. You could make a video of you walking around the Matterport on your screen. So you know how you use Loom? Loom is an app that allows you to make videos of your screen and whatever it is you're doing on your screen. So if you can walk around the house through the Matterport, but that's a whole extra step. You have to have actually, I'll show you what you have to put that in. And then I put in just a document. This is just a PDF or a screenshot. I think I did this as a screenshot and put it in as a JPEG, a picture. And then this is the agent branding, and this is the legal footer that just has all of the, and then of course it does have all of your connections to your social media on it. Oops, well, that's fascinating. Look at that. Huh. Okay, we'll try that again. There's something that's not connected properly there. I'll have to fix that.
So Debbie, you have this as a client, the buyer walks into the house and they put the link into their cell phone, correct?
Correct.
Is it possible to do a QR code on that stand-up where you're advertising the link and do a QR code?
And actually, if you go here, where do you have a place that you're making QR codes?
I don't.
Yes, there is a site, QR generator, I think it's free.
Okay.
Yeah, you could just Google it, a bunch of sites.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is that brochure, and this has a bit.ly link, and the bit.ly link is bit.ly, always bit.ly/, and this is 24 Twilight LALP, capital LP. But here it has, you know what? I wonder if you have to pay for it to do a QL code. Huh. A QR code. That might be the case. You may have to that I'm not sure about. But there are lots of ways that you can get to QR codes. I saw that on here today and I thought I could do it, but it doesn't look. Oh, there it is, right there. QR code to use. Oh, you must upgrade your plan to do a QR code on Bitly. I don't pay for Bitly. So if you did pay for Bitly, you could do a QR code on it. So yes, you could do either a QR code or you can do that short link, 100%. Either one works. And QR codes have kind of come back into favor, haven't they? A lot of restaurants are using them. Okay, so how do we create this one? Let's go here. And we're going to again do as a landing page, single landing page. Create the page. And what I'm going to do is that Westport listing. And I'm just going to show you how to put different elements in here. They won't all match, but it doesn't matter. Oh my goodness. I want to change this to 28 Bulkley. Was that Lane Avenue? Avenue landing page. And I'm going to do start with the branded header, right? Branded header. And then on this one, I'm going to put a legal footer at the very bottom. And I find that if I kind of fill the bottom and then put things in between, it seems to work a little bit better. So I'm going to put the listing under. So now I've said that now. There it goes. There. Put the listing under the header. And I'm just putting the fields in now. I'm not putting content in. I'm just putting the fields in. So that's the listing. I could do I'm going to show you how to add a video. And then I will put let's try out a market snap and just see what happens with that. That'll be a little bit of a test. Okay, so now we've got all of our parts in. We've got the header, the listing. That goes way down there. The video, which looks like an envelope. And then the neighborhood snap, the market snap. And then everything down below is just what it is. Oh, I didn't put my, I see I didn't put my agent branding in there. I do want to put my agent branding under that. Come on, there we go. There's the agent branding. Okay, now it has me in there and right, everybody sees all of that. Who's going to tell me what the next step is?
To
Fill the envelope?
I heard configure widgets. Exactly right. Now, see, on the first one that we did, we only had 2 fields. Now we have 6 fields. These 2 we don't have to do anything to, but we have to edit 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I clicked on the listing first. So now let's configure this. Now we're going to search. And let's see what comes up. It's 28, yes, Bulkley Avenue, Northwestport. Okay, let's see what comes up here. Imagine that. Did you see that? Whew. I love it when that happens. Select. Now I can use that first picture as the first picture, or I can choose a different one. So I don't know these pictures. I'm choosing something at random. I'm gonna try and choose a, boy, they're so tiny, aren't they tiny? Let's see if we can make them any bigger. I'd love to see a kitchen picture. Do I see a kitchen picture? There, that looks like a kitchen picture. I'm going to save that and apply. The only thing you can really edit on this is the first picture. And there we go. So now when they look at this, the first picture they're going to see is that kitchen. There's the full copy from the listing. Da-dun, da-dun, da-dum. Fabulous, right?
Really great.
Okay, and now we're going to go back to the header because we're going to make a headline that says, welcome to 28 Bulkley Avenue. And we're going to save and apply that. And then we're going to go down and add our video. It's still working. Here we go. Now we're going down to, we've got the listing. Now we're in the video. Take a quick walk through of this home. And then you can put another description that goes down here underneath as well, if you want to give it any extra juice. So you have 2 choices. You can use a video URL, which would typically be a YouTube URL. I don't know where else you would, sometimes you may have other hosting places, but almost always I would use a YouTube URL. Or you can upload an MP4. Here's the thing. If you upload a video, it has to be very small. If you use a YouTube URL, you don't have that limitation. If you're uploading an MP4, it can't be more than 100 megabytes. And that's a real snippet. It's probably between maybe 30 seconds, between 15 and 30 seconds. of video. So just a heads up on that. So what I would do is go to here, and I'm going to choose one of my videos, copy the video link. That's all I need. And then go back to here. And I just put that video link in there, and then I save and apply. And as soon as it refreshes, so one of the tips here is have your pieces determined and chosen. And there's the video. Now we go down here and let's see, is the listing agent for Bulkley still on the call?
Yes.
So tell me, does it have a neighborhood name?
Long Lots.
Oh, okie dokie. Long Lots neighborhood. Okay. And the postal code is 06880, right?
Yes.
And let's see. Aha, look at that. So did you see what we just did? You put the postal code, the zip code in, and then you're able to choose likely neighborhoods for that postal code. And happily, Long Lots looks like it's a next door neighborhood.
Mhm.
Here we go. And now we scroll down again. I'm liking this. Does everybody like this?
Mhm.
Oh, look at that. Ooh. Look at that. I mean, I just get really excited about this stuff. All right, we're going to save that and apply, and we're done. Okay, who thinks that's hard? Nobody, right? That's easy. All right, so checkpoints. We've got a new title for it up here. We've gone through all of the sections. We know everything is in place correctly. We saved and applied. And now we're going to, you can either save the landing page if you think you have to come back and do some more editing, or you can just publish it. Now, when I publish it, it's ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to go click publish. My landing page is created. And now, what's the best way for me to get this to all of you? You know what? Everybody sent me a text, right? Did everybody send me a text? I'm going to shorten this link and I'm going to send you 2 links in your text. So check out the registration form and then check out the landing page, okay? And I will turn you over to Mr. Rick unless you have any additional questions.
I have one quick question, Debbie. So
Yeah.
from when you want to try to delete some of the widgets, how do you do that?
Delete widgets? Okay, I'll go back. I will go back and show you. Ooh, he's got it. Okay, hold on. So we'll go back. Hold on. So if you're editing, here we go. I have everything that I have here is published. So let me just do something really quickly and show you how to do that. Because you can, until you publish, you can edit anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just go, we'll just put that in and I'll put that in. I'm just gonna put a whole bunch of stuff in here.
Yes.
There we go. And then I'll do this. Okay. And then when I look at it, I go, that doesn't make any sense. That's weird. I don't like that. So let's see. Let's start with the market snap. I really don't want this up here. See this? I can pull it down.
What? Who are you calling?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I want that down, and then I want the video. I want the video to go up. So the video's gone up 1 notch. And then the video is going to go up another notch. Hello, you are.
It's funny, on yours, it shows the little arrows, and mine doesn't. It's funny.
So you have to go over here. The header, I'm not, let's see here. I'm going to decide I don't want, here, watch this.
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness gracious sakes alive. You have to make this open up. Do you see where the title opens up, new market snap?
Yes.
Okay, and then come up over here. Then you should have a little gadget over here.
I don't, that's why I don't see it.
You don't see that.
Yeah.
Isn't
Because
that
I saw it before. I did it one time and it was very easy to delete, and now I don't see it. Like, what happened?
Well, that's where you then just click on the trash can and you can delete.
Delete.
Right there.
Okay. Yeah.
So you can either move them. That's the combination. You again, you may have to reset your settings and start over.
Yeah.
It could have something to do with Chrome right now.
Okay.
So I will try to have the answer to you for Chrome tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Okay.
Thank you, Debbie.
All right.
Hey, Debbie.
Yep.
I have one quick question, kind of on a different topic, but on command.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do a bulk tag delete?
No, you cannot delete tags in bulk.
But you can add them in bulk.
Yes, sir. Mhm. Yep.
Okay, I kept looking and I thought, well, if I can add them, I should be able to delete them in bulk.
I think at some point they will come up with that. I am going to ask for that because that would be very handy because sometimes you just change things that you want. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, thanks, Debbie.
Yep. Okay. Okie dokie. Have fun and Ignite.
Thanks, Debbie.
Okay.
Thanks, Debbie.
And let me get.
Thank you.
Here's Donna.
Thank you.
And unshare. There we go. And I don't see Rick. Has Rick come
There I
in?
am.
There you are. I see you now. Now I see you. I see you there, but I don't see your little picture. There you are. Okay.
Oh, it's cold.
Now I can make you the guy. There you go. Okay.
All righty. Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to see you. I hope that you had a great opportunity with Debbie to learn all of those. Learn all of those cool and exciting new features in Command. What was your biggest aha from that time period just spent? Not a one, huh?
How
No,
easy it is. If something doesn't go wrong. I was playing with it today and I kept getting error and error. It was driving me crazy, but if there's no error, it goes smoothly and it's really awesome tool.
That's kind of like life, right? If nothing goes wrong, beautiful. And yet, what do we know about life? We know about life that stuff happens, right? So expect stuff to happen and then just decide that we're gonna truck forward anyway. All right, so let's pick up where we left off yesterday with the anatomy of a seller transaction. We got through page 1 of that document and need to finish that up today. And if you remember, we kind of went through what those offers look like, what you should be checking, how you're going to present that offer specifically to the client, and that's kind of where we ended up. Anybody have any other thoughts after we finished last night about what we went over yesterday? Comments, concerns, questions? Nope. Okay, excellent. If there's anybody who doesn't have the anatomy of a seller transaction handout that was actually emailed last week, if somebody has it downloaded and can just pop it in the chat as a file so that people can grab it there, that would be awesome. I see some head nods, so if anyone's looking for it, it should be in the chat shortly. So give it a second and you can grab it from there, or check your email from last week. I think it went out on Wednesday or Thursday. Oh no, actually anatomy of a seller transaction went out yesterday, right? Today's Wednesday. Yeah, so I think that actually went out yesterday. So you can check your email yesterday. That's all right. Now I'm getting head nods. First I was getting sideways glances. Now I'm getting head nods. Okay, good. So I think where we ended up was the top of page 2, right? We actually ended up talking about ARM. What does ARM stand for?
Accept, reject, or modify.
Yeah, right. Accept, reject, or modify. Accept, reject, or modify. And we did have a conversation before we got off last night. Who typically has the most power in a negotiation, the buyer or the seller?
Both.
Both do.
Right. And so my answer to that is whoever I'm representing. Right? Because it's not necessarily both. It could be both, but it's who you represent, because you're the one who's going to continue to make sure that they remember that they have ARM and that they're empowered and that they get to make the decisions and call the shots. Right? I'm going to tell you, especially on the buyer side today, it's really important to have buyers feel as empowered as they possibly can be, because they're not terribly empowered today, are they? No, they're not. Right? They're not terribly empowered. That's just the way the market is. And yet, if we can make them feel as empowered as possible, they will make better decisions to make sure that they end up on top each time. Make sense? Is anybody struggling right now on the list side, because we are in the listing side? Anybody struggling with navigating through multiple offers as a listing agent? And that's not necessarily the topic that we're on, and yet it kind of strikes me that in order to make sure that we are continuing to be topical, we should address some topical items. And you having issues on the multiple offer side as a list agent, if you are listing anything today, you will need to understand how to navigate through multiple offers, right? Because unless you're doing something really, really wrong, you will likely have multiple offers on your properties. Go ahead, Ashley. I saw that you unmuted.
I was just going to say, like, one of the things that came up on a property that I recently had multiple offers on, and I was the listing agent, was just understanding what was most important to my seller. And I think that depending on their situation, I think it's important to identify it's not always price. It could be the terms, the strength of the type of loan. Like, for instance, like in this situation, my client was really apprehensive about an FHA loan, probably for good reason. And, really preferred going the conventional route. And that was definitely a deterring point. Like, they would have preferred a conventional loan at a lower, less than asking, versus taking a full price offer with an FHA because of the risk factor.
Got it. And don't forget, because we just had, I forget if it was Tammy or if, in that specific example, make sure that you're getting external additional info to be certain you're giving the sellers every opportunity to make a great decision. For example, grab one of our mortgage partners and have them talk to the seller about the real risks involved with FHA, because there are some, and then there are some that get overblown, and there are some that people kind of make up, right, about risks with FHA. So make sure that all that information is on the table. But Ashley makes a really good point. It's not always price. As a matter of fact, some of the better multiple offer scenarios that I've ever worked my way through with sellers didn't come out with who was on top. They came out with who has the best overall offer on the table, right? So let me ask a couple of questions just to make sure that we're all got our heads screwed on straight when it comes to navigating multiple offers as a listing agent. Do you have a proactive duty to disclose multiple offers to other agents who are bringing an offer?
No.
That was not said terribly confidently, Barbara. It was a big question mark. So taking that question mark of an answer, I will give you the answer. The answer is no. As a listing agent, you do not have a proactive duty to disclose multiple offers. So what happens if an agent calls you and says, hey, I heard you had offers on this property. Do you have other offers?
I would say yes.
Okay, yes is sort of the right answer, depending on what?
If I had other offers.
If they ask you,
Depending
you
on
let
what
them know.
the seller
If
has
it's truthful.
instructed you.
Okay, so I heard a whole lot of answers that you'd think are the right answers, but I think I only heard one actual correct answer. Donna, go ahead, give that to us.
You have to proceed as your seller has instructed you to. So you need to ask them, if I am asked, shall I disclose? It's up to them.
That's the right answer, right? Sellers have a right to not share that information if they choose not to share that information, right? Most sellers do choose to share it, and yet some sellers don't. And we have to follow the lawful instruction of the seller, right? Yes, Christine.
So I just had this happen today. We put in an offer. I asked if there were other offers. They told me no. So we went in with a reasonable offer, only to be told via text hours later that they accepted another offer and that they had many offers. Had we known that going in, we would have put in a higher offer. We didn't know that. I'm just wondering why an agent would do that and not, get a higher offer possibly for the sellers.
So great question. And so in a couple of things on what Christine just described. First, if in fact you're asked and the seller has said, you know what, I would prefer that you not share the fact that we have other offers. If you're asked if there are other offers and there are other offers and you're just not permitted based on the seller's wishes to share that, the answer isn't no, right? So unfortunately that other agent, Christine, that agent misspoke, because no is not a truthful answer, right? The answer could be, thank you so much for asking that. The seller has actually asked me not to disclose whether or not there are other offers on the table. That would have given you better or different information. So unfortunately, in that specific scenario, somebody misspoke, either purposely or not, misspoke and led you and the buyers down perhaps a wrong path. But the whole point is the seller gets to make that choice. And so Christine's question of why on earth would anyone not choose, it's a good question, right? There are some sellers who might feel that having a conversation with everyone and their sister around the multiple offers may prevent other buyers from making offers, right? Look at it and think, okay, well, you know, if had we known differently, the buyers maybe would have made a different choice and made a better offer, therefore helping the seller. And yet some sellers have it in their head that, you know, people freak out because that's how they feel they might react. People will freak out and run away from the multiple offer or the bidding war situation, right? It is clear to me as well, Christine, that in that scenario, that listing agent lacks some skill. And I'm sorry if it was somebody else on the call. I don't mean to pick on you, and it's not a judgment. It's just an observation from a coaching perspective. It seems to me like that listing agent could utilize some additional skills to really get clarity around what their responsibility is in that scenario and what conversations should be being had with their seller to help the seller understand some of the strategies involved. Right?
Exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I'm sorry that happened. It does happen. And it's, you know, because here's the thing. And again, I don't say this as a judgment. I just say that because it's fact. There is a low barrier to entry into what we do. And so that does mean that you work with people who are less skilled and talented. And so sometimes it's a matter of asking more questions, right? Instead of just the question of, do you have other offers? Maybe you have to ask a couple more and they say no. Great, have you had offers? Has the seller expressed how they might address multiple offers? Should they come up? Right, I'm curious what, any advice you can give Mr. or Mrs. Listing Agent about the approach the buyer should take to getting the seller to say yes, right? If you keep asking additional questions, you might end up stumbling upon some more information. Perhaps not, but you won't know until you ask additional questions. So let me ask this. Is there one way or a right way for a seller and a listing agent to address multiple offers? Okay, I'll give you the answer. Boy, not a very talkative group tonight. My goodness, has everyone talked way too much today and has just decided not for the next 2 hours? Right. So is there? I'll ask it this way: is there a responsibility of the seller and the listing agent to go back to everyone who has made an offer with either? I'll use these words because it's what's said all the time. I dislike them, but with the highest and best, or can they pick one offer of the 13 they just received and just start working with that one? What's the duty that exists?
Can't you do it either way?
Yes, you can. Right, so the seller gets to make that choice. Some sellers choose to work with the first one in and see if they can't maneuver that particular first one in to something that they're willing to say yes to. Sometimes sellers decide that they'll pick one of the multiple offers that they've received and just proceed with that one until that one decides not to play their game. And sometimes sellers decide to go back to everybody and see if they can ratchet up the numbers or ratchet better terms, right? The seller gets to make that choice in consult with the listing agent, but it is ultimately the seller's choice, right? And I say that out loud because I want you to recognize as listing agents that that's a conversation you get to have, especially when the market's moving as quickly as it is today. That's a conversation you get to have with your sellers. How exactly in a multiple offer situation do you think you would prefer to move forward? If it would be helpful, Mr. Seller, I can actually go through a couple of different options and we can talk about that. But I would talk about it, guys, before the multiple offers show up so that you and they are ready as the offers start to come in to handle them the way you've outlined and discussed.
Excuse me, Rick.
Eric and then Barbara.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. I do agree with what you say. I think it's up to the seller to choose. It's up to us to explain thoroughly, like we said yesterday, about every line in the offer, about the conditions, etc. Eventually it's up to the seller to decide with what or who he wants to move forward. Is it good practice, though, as an agent, that you convince your seller that we return to every offer with a final answer, like the ARM, accept, reject, modify?
Well, so yes, it's a great question, and I'm going to answer it slightly differently than your question ended. Yes, you have a responsibility to every offer to provide an answer and to provide a timely answer. That answer doesn't have to be an opportunity, however. And so what I mean by that, if the top line of my screen, the four of you all bring offers, and I have a conversation with my seller and they choose Eric's client's offer, well, I do have a responsibility, and they choose him by saying we're gonna single Eric and his clients out. We're gonna negotiate some more because we do have multiple offers and we'd like their offer to be better, but we're only going to go back to them. And until or unless they don't play the game that we want to be played, those other offers we're going to save as backups. We're not going to everyone with an opportunity. But just because, so I go back to Eric to say, look, the sellers would like to counter your folks at X. Sometimes that's a counter over asking, right? Crazy things are happening. But I do have a responsibility to go back to Stuart and Anna and Mara to say, hey, I just wanted to let you know the sellers are so appreciative of your client's offer. However, they have chosen to move forward at this time with one of the four offers, and it wasn't your folks. We encourage you to stay engaged as a backup just in case things don't go the way we expect them to with the offer that was chosen. So you absolutely have a responsibility to give an answer. And when I say a timely one, that to me is within 24 hours or less. Frankly, it's within 20 minutes of when you have it, right? You being busy doesn't give you the right as a listing agent not to deliver the information that has been decided upon by your seller to the other agents involved. You don't like it when it's done to you on the buyer side. So make sure that you're behaving like the listing agent that you want to be working with when you represent the buyer. Does that answer that, Eric?
Yeah, and I was actually hoping for an answer like it also helps you show your integrity within your network. Other agents will want to work with you in the future if you have this kind of attitude, I guess.
Well, yes, and that is true, or at the very least, it won't work against you, right? You won't start racking up points to say, oh God, it's Eric's listing. He's the guy who never responds to anybody, right? So you certainly don't want those things building up. Any other questions about multiple offers? Like I said, I know. Oh, sorry, Barbara, I did have you next.
That's okay. In September, I had multiple offers on a property, and we gave a time for all offers to be in and to be submitted. And then past that time, an agent came by with another offer. Actually, she sent it along, and she let me know she was sending it along, and she reminded me that I was obligated to show it to my seller, which of course I did. So I showed it to my seller. As it turns out, that wasn't the offer my seller chose. The next day, she got in touch with me and told me that she wanted me to make sure that my seller signed off on her offer, that she didn't accept it. She wanted to have her sign it because she was surprised that she would not have taken that offer over another. What is that all? I still don't know what was right or wrong about that.
Sure. So ultimately, this has been an age-old question about, how do you know if everyone's telling the truth? How do you know if there's really multiple offers? How do you know that the listing agent actually showed or presented your offer to the seller? I'll give you my first answer, and then we'll dive into it a little bit more. My first answer is, and I think you've heard me say it before, my first answer is, at some point you have to trust the fact that as licensees, we are at least mostly all going to play by most of the rules. And when I get questioned by buyers or sellers about that, my answer is, look, I understand a certain level of distrust. I get it. And at the same time, I want to encourage you to understand that we are licensed by the state. This is how we all earn our living. And infractions of the rules create problems for our license. And so what I choose to believe is that the colleagues that we have out in the field, their license is important to them, or as important to them as mine is to me. And so following the rules is just part of the game, right? Because here's the thing, can you live in a world of complete distrust? Well, sure, except it's hard to get anything done. And again, I'm almost positive we had this conversation the other day, because I think Jerome put something very relevant in the chat box. I can't remember exactly what it was, but something to the effect of, nothing gets done if everyone believes that we're not working with facts. Everything grinds to a halt when everyone looks at each other with distrust. And so, so on the listing side, oftentimes you may be asked to prove it, right? Barbara was pretty much just asked to prove it. And so what do you do in that scenario? Does the seller have a responsibility to prove to the buyer's agents or the other buyers that they looked at the offer and decided against it? I see head shaking, as in no's. That is correct, right? No, they don't have a responsibility to do that. So in that scenario, what Barbara could have done is she could have gone back to the seller to say, hey, that last offer I brought you, they were really surprised you didn't take it. And they would love just a little note saying that you received it and went and chose a different direction. Is that something that you're willing to provide? And then the seller can make a decision as to whether or not they want to provide it or not. And so then from there, you would then, whatever the seller decides, the seller decides yes, you go back and have a conversation with the buyer's agent to say, here it is. If the seller decides no, you can go back to the buyer's agent and say, I did present your request for confirmation to the seller, and they respectfully declined the request. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to provide that for you. Trust that what I'm telling you is the truth, but the seller is unwilling to provide that. Does that help, Barbara?
Yeah, I did. Yes, because I asked my seller to sign it and she did, but I kept feeling like it was so wrong to put her in that position. I mean, she was very sweet about it. And I just said, they were just so excited. They were sure this offer was going to be the one you were going to accept. With so many offers, she's probably just concerned that, in fact, I really did show this to you. Would you mind signing off on it? And she did, but I still felt very, I wonder if I should have done that or not.
Yeah. So here's one thing, and I don't say this to be funny. Some of you may think it's funny, but I don't say it to be funny. I won't call it an error because it's not an error. Be careful that you're not operating or making decisions from the position of how you feel, right? Or how you feel it might make someone else feel, because that's subjectivity versus objectivity, right? Objectivity says, this is the request. I'll take the request to the seller. The seller can decide what they want to do, and then I'll bring the answer back. Objectively, that's just a conversation or two with the people involved. When you allow feelings, right? When you allow those feelings to kind of creep on in, it sometimes clouds the judgment of what objectively there is to do or not do. And so for some of you, right? Some of you I don't know well enough yet to be able to say, this is an area where you may have to work, right? Others of you, I think I do know well enough to know that for some of you, what I just said, you look at and say, well, why would you behave any other way? I don't understand. And yet for others of you, simply because of your natural behavioral style, it's a much more difficult path forward to kind of remove some of those feelings from the conversation. because it's, and here's the thing, I'm not telling you not to feel, because how you feel and the fact that you convey some of those feelings at times is what makes you attractive to other people. So don't get rid of it altogether. Just know when objectivity needs to kind of win out over that. And in a scenario like this, boom, da boom, it's just a matter of having a simple conversation, right? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Cool beans. And just so we're clear, Barbara, you did absolutely exactly what you should have done, right? So if it's been bothering you for 6 months, we can now absolve you of that. No more worries, right? Because that's, you were asked to do that. You asked the seller if she was willing to do that. She said, okay, and you took it back. And then everybody ended up being happy, right? And so at the end of the day, if everyone ends up feeling, so let me go on record as saying Christine is owning up to the fact that she's way too emotional, right? Somebody recently said to me, oh, this is horrible to repeat, but somebody recently said to me, Rick, I think the reason you're good at scripts is because you don't seem to have many feelings. And I said, I'm not sure the two are necessarily are necessarily related. And I can guarantee you, I actually am a human being. I am not an automaton. I do have feelings. I've just spent 20 plus years practicing how to be objective. Right? And so I want you to hear that. I spent 20 plus years practicing how to be objective. It's not necessarily something that comes naturally to me. I don't naturally, whereas Barbara and Christine may operate from that place of care, right? Because the feelings I was talking about with Barbara, I know Barbara well enough to know that it's not anything else than she cares about other people, right? And she has a high level of if you know the DISC, right, behavioral styles, Barbara's more of a high S. And so she comes from that wanting to protect people and make sure everyone feels okay, right? And that's not a bad thing. And yet, over time, you sometimes have to learn to pull that down a little bit and pull that kind of objective D or C behavior up so that you can just be a little bit more objective. I don't know if I said that well, but that's, you know what I mean. Christine.
I didn't mean to be, I'm sorry, but yes, it was such a good reminder for me because I am much too emotional. And when I remember your words about just being objective, I deal with it much better.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what happens is the results end up showing up far faster, right? Because the reality is most of the clients we work with have more emotion than like enough emotion for all of us. And so when you show up calm, cool, collected, and remain very objective, you become that counterbalance to their emotion. Right. I will tell you that towards the end of my career in the field, listing and selling houses, we used to say to clients, right up front in an expectation setting conversation. So one of the things that I'm good at is helping you make decisions that start and end with objective fact. That doesn't mean that you won't bring emotion to the table. However, I want you to be prepared. There may be times where I say to you, hey, Donna, remember that conversation we had about me keeping you focused on making really smart business decisions? It seems to me like you might be in a spot of emotion versus objective fact. And I want us to just make that adjustment before we cruise forward making this decision. I would just say that to the buyer or the seller whose hair was on fire. Right? Let's tamp that down. Let's put out the fire and then have a conversation. And because I set it up earlier, it wasn't offensive when I said it when they were really emotional, because I reminded them that was one of the things that they hired me to do. Right? You said yes to hiring me because I told you that I was I was good at and courageous enough to kind of call out when we were operating in emotion, push the pause button, and then do a reset so we could have an objective conversation. Donna.
Yeah, and so another way to look at that is to realize that that was a simple request. And it's my job not to protect my clients from some possible boogeyman that might make them feel bad. My job is to bring them requests like that so that it's up to them. I don't have the capacity to make that decision for them, nor should I stand in the way of that information coming to them. So I actually care enough about them and respect their judgment enough with coaching and counseling and explanation to allow them to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
So
even if that's a mistake, even if the decision ends up being a mistake.
It's that, like, they're grown people. You can give them all the information. And you say this a lot, Rick. You say, do our clients ever make bad decisions? Yes. And once we've given them all the information and they choose something that might not have been, let's say, my choice or the best path forward that I think, they're allowed to do that. And then it is my job to guide them through the consequences of that. But it is, the bottom line is, it's their decision. It's above my pay grade to make a decision for my clients without at least running it by them.
Yeah, very true. And what I loved what Donna just said is she simplified it to, it was a simple request, right? These things are typically simple requests. So look at them, kind of boil it down to just what it is. That's a simple request. I'll end this conversation this way. Your main objective, well, let me ask it as a question. What is your main objective as a listing agent?
Sell the house.
Navigating through multiple offers. What is your main objective as the listing agent navigating through multiple offers?
To get the best offer for the house.
Okay.
Help
best
your client
offer.
make the best decision.
Yeah.
To help your clients make the best judgments in this sales transaction.
Yeah.
Based on all the facts that you provide.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ashley.
To make the best decision for them.
Yeah. So I love all those offers. I don't agree with them, but I love all of those offers, all of those answers. And here's it was kind of a trick question, right? Because for the most part, our job is almost always to interpret current conditions so that the client can make the best decision possible, right? When you're a listing agent with multiple offers, your main goal is to make sure that everyone involved feels as though they have been treated fairly. Because the very best way to make certain that that the seller gets to make the best decision possible is to keep all the players in play and everyone calm and everyone feeling as though they have a shot. That's the trick to making sure that the seller gets to, because I've seen sellers receive 6 or 8 offers, and because people felt like things were going sideways, those 6 or 8 offers turned into 1 or none. Because everybody turned around and said, you know what, screw this, I'm out of here. I don't like the way there are games being played here. People aren't being fair. Now, sometimes people feel that way, even though things are being fair, right? There, you can't help the drama with some folks. And yet, the main goal as a listing agent, navigating through multiple offers, is to ensure that everyone feels as though they are being treated fairly. Fairly has everything to do with timely, right? Because sometimes people, in the absence of actual fact, people start making their own stories up, right? So if you choose not to deliver information to buyer's agents because the sellers simply haven't made a decision yet, or because you're busy, understand that every buyer's agent with their buyers is sitting anxiously waiting for an answer, making up a story as to why they haven't heard back from you. That's just what happens, right? It's what happens when we deal with humans. When I find a way that we can actually run this business and not have to deal with humans, I will let you know. But until then, we have to recognize that that's how humans behave. And so make sure that we're over communicating to all the buyer's agents so that they can over communicate with all of their buyers. It's the best way I know how to keep everybody calm and understanding that they're being heard, right? Their offer is being heard and considered so that everyone feels like it's fair. Margaret, and then we're moving forward.
I was just going to point out that, so I just came from a situation where I had 28 offers, which sounds like a great thing, but it was actually kind of crazy. But I over communicated every step of the way because we needed more time to go through it all. And I actually got several compliments from the buyer's agents, one of whom said sometimes she doesn't even know her offer wasn't accepted until she sees its deposit. And the way I looked at it was, I've been on the buyer side a lot, and I could end up on the buying side with one of theirs listing it. And if I've treated them respectfully, that might give me an advantage.
Yeah, so true. And that actually circles us back to a question Marcel asked in the chat, right? Do you communicate who won before? Oh, Eric, right? Do we communicate to Eric that we're moving forward with his folks? Do we communicate to the other agents involved that we're moving forward with Eric's folks before we have a signed deal with Eric's folks? And my answer to that is if you can get a signed deal with Eric's folks in a timely fashion, well, then maybe you would look to have something signed with Eric's folks before you went back. But no, I think to make sure everyone else feels like they're treated fairly, if the sellers choose Eric's folks only, and they're going to do some work with Eric's folks, that might take 24 or 48 hours for those parties to get to an offer. I don't think it's right to keep the other buyers and buyers agents hanging out with no information for that period of time. So my answer is yes, I would go back to the other three and simply say, hey, Mara, just wanted to let you know, again, the sellers have made a choice to work with one of the other offers that came in. If in fact they can't get it together, we will be looking to come back to the other offers that choose to stay and make a different choice. But right now they chose to move forward with a separate offer. So that's the way I would do that. And yes, Julie, it is the Wild West, especially right now, right? Especially right now. Which is why we're having these conversations, because the more we can do our part to attempt to tame some of that Wild Westness, right? Is that an actual adjective, Wild Westness? I guess it is now. Right, the better we all do. All right, so let's dive back into our document. Number 7. So we were on number 7. Number 7 states that be certain that you examine every line of the offer document that you receive, right? Because one of the things that you want to be certain you're doing is pointing out to the sellers any potential pitfalls or any additional conversations that they may want to have with you or their attorney. For example, if something gets brought to you on a 4-page contract instead of a regular offer to purchase, which in your neck of the woods is what you normally see, or somebody brings a purchase agreement, right? Well, both of those documents, the contract and the purchase agreement, have some language in them that says when both parties sign, this is a contract and it's a binding contract. Now, there may be contingencies in the contract, but it does state that there's a binding contract. So you need to point that out just to make certain that the sellers understand what it is they're signing, right? That's different than you playing attorney. Don't all of a sudden start to become their attorney. But if there's a line in there that says, once everyone signs this is a binding contract, you want to just at least point that out. Some sellers think that's great news. Well, that's excellent, because I want those folks bound to me like I'm bound to them. Some sellers freak out about that and say, okay, well, what happens if I get a better offer after I sign this? Right? What's the answer to that? So if someone signs a document, both buyer and seller sign a document that has language that says it's a binding contract, and then all of a sudden 2 days later, a $50,000 higher offer comes in, and they ask you, what can I do? Can I accept that offer and dump this first one? What's your answer?
Ask your
I
attorney.
don't think you're allowed, are you? I don't.
No.
So I heard the right answer. Where did it come from?
Me.
Go ahead, Alex, repeat it.
Erna.
Go ahead, Alex, repeat it.
Ask your attorney.
Yeah, that's the right answer, guys. That's the right answer. You know what? Let's do this, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Let's get your attorney on the phone and describe the scenario and make sure he or she is actually putting eyeballs on the document that we're talking about so that you can get legal counsel about whether or not what your exposure might be if in fact you choose to make a change.
That's a legal question.
Right? Because the answer to can they make a change is of course they can. They can do whatever they'd like. There also may be consequences. So we need to understand, we have to help them understand what the consequences might be, which doesn't necessarily come from you. It comes from their attorney because now you're talking about getting them out of or having them rescind a signed executed contract. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All righty. So be certain that you know what they're signing because you need to know it so that they know it. Margaret, did you have something for us?
Oh, no. Am I off of mute? Yeah, sorry.
You are.
No,
Just
just
like,
listening.
want to make sure that you didn't start singing. Although maybe that's lovely. I don't know. We'll have to test that out one time. So number 8, work with the seller such that they fully understand the offer that's being presented. Answer any questions, counsel them next steps. Again, accept, reject, modify, right? So you may be in a position to just say yes. They may be in a position to offer a counter. It is my personal opinion and how I practiced when I was a listing agent that sellers, for all intents and purposes, don't get to go back empty-handed, which means no counter is not really an acceptable path forward. Now, I will tell you that with the market moving as quickly as it is, there are a lot of sellers who are making those decisions. I'm not sure I necessarily agree. I think some version of a counter, some answer is required. Think about it. You decide to play catch with a friend in the park, and your friend throws you the ball. You throw the ball back to them, and they turn and go home. Well, you're no longer having a catch, right? And so I would be cautious. Again, the way the market is moving right this very moment may be some version of an exception depending on what's on the table to what I just said. And yet I don't want you to think that the way the market is right now is the way the market is all the time. As a matter of fact, in 21 years, I've only experienced this once, something close to this one other time, right? So the market moves this quickly, like once every decade or more, maybe every decade and a half. So don't get used to it and don't build systems around it. Know the differences. I'd rather that they go back with something small, even if it's minuscule, right? Throw them $500 and then let me do my job with the buyer's agent to help move them to a place that is more acceptable. Instead of you immediately turning them down, now you seem like inflexible sellers. The last thing you want to do is seem inflexible. So even if you're going to counter something small, counter something small. Number 9, you may want to call the name on the mortgage pre-qualification letter and ask some questions about the buyer. Like, I'm curious, Mr. and Mrs. Loan Officer, do you have any concerns about their ability to obtain a mortgage? So let me ask this. As the listing agent, can you call the buyer's loan officer?
Sure.
Yeah, of course. That's why that letter is there, right? So that there's the potential for communication. Now, I wouldn't necessarily just do it willy-nilly. I would, if Margaret brought me the buyer, I would simply let her know, hey, just so you know, the sellers have asked that we verify the information with the loan officer, so I will be calling Jane Smith, just so it's not a surprise. Again, over-communicate on that so that people don't feel weird about it, but ask some questions, right? I will tell you that for me, I always asked questions that they really shouldn't have answered. What kind of loan program are you pushing them through? Are they well qualified? Do you see any pitfalls? Have you run credit and assets? Has that all come out? looking good. There are some questions that the loan officer probably shouldn't be answering, and yet it's not against the law for you to ask, right? Who do you work for? You work for the seller. And so if the seller can get better information about making a decision about whether they're qualified enough, and the loan officer decides to give you more info than they should, well, okay. Number 10, once the offer is negotiated and acceptable to both parties, all right, that's going to get rewritten and represented if things are changed, and then everybody signs it. Guys, it is my opinion, what I used to say is it is my opinion that everyone needs to sign that within 24 hours. I'll tell you, with the market moving that quickly, I think you're crazy to wait 24 hours to get signatures, right? The signed contract, there's no reason it can't just get signed, right? If someone says yes, well, they're on the phone with you. They're clearly in a place where they can just open their phone. Remember, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to drive over to their house and obtain their wet signature. Send it to them in DocuSign and have them do it on their phone. They can be on vacation in the middle of the bush of Africa and still sign an offer or a contract via DocuSign, right? One of the things about living in 2021 is that a lot of those reasons that used to exist for, I just can't get a hold of someone. Yeah, I'm not sure that's really all that true, right? Because if someone's kids were in trouble, I bet you someone could find a way to get a hold of them. So my point in number 10, let's make sure that the seller is signing that as quickly as possible so that the buyer that they've chosen doesn't make a different choice. Stuff happens. All of a sudden, guess what? The house that they really wanted calls them back and says, hey, the offer fell through. Are you still interested? Right? Depending on what they're signing, that could be an important time frame. Number 11, ask the agent for the buyer all the info. You want to know who the buyer's attorney will be. You want to know who the home inspector will be, who the septic inspector will be. If the buyer plans on making application with the lender or the broker whose letter was included with the offer. My bet is that many of you are asking the first 3 questions. My bet is that very few of you are asking that last question, right? Why is it important to ask the question, does the seller plan on making application with the person that we have a letter from? Yes, Alex.
Because you want to make sure certain, there could be a difference. There could be a separation in their minds between their pre-qual and then their lender. So you want to, remove that pitfall and know precisely where it's going to go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Right. Every once in a while, I can remember back when I was still a listing agent, it was Lending Tree. I think Lending Tree is now like Rocket Mortgage. I think it's gone through a bunch of different versions, right? And now it's Rocket Mortgage. But Lending Tree, those online lenders, oftentimes people decide, I'll get the local person to write me my approval letter, but then I'm going online and doing Rocket Mortgage. What do we know about online lending as it relates to the money showing up at the closing? They don't have the best track record, right? Don't have the best track record. So that's information that if the seller knows that they're choosing this particular offer because it was written as coming from Westport Mortgage or from Loan Depot or from Guaranteed Rate, right? Somebody we know versus Rocket Mortgage. I want to make certain that as we move this forward, that they're actually making application with the people they told us they were making application with. You don't want surprises down the road.
I have a question, sorry. A listing agent asking about a home inspection. Is it really fine, or they may think, oh, maybe she knows a home inspector and they can become suspicious?
Well, they might think that. I'm okay with whatever they might think. I want to know who all these people are, right? Because again, as my duty to the seller, I'll tell you exactly why that's in there. Because Debbie and I had situation after situation back when I was still in the field with a particular inspector who would absolutely destroy transactions every single time he came and inspected one of our listings. I just to this day do not think he was competent. I'm not sure. And so long and boring story short, we finally made a decision and said, okay, he's banned, right? And so part of what the conversations we would have when people hired us as listing agents was just understand that if this particular inspector is who your buyers choose, we are going to right up front advise you to advise them that he's not allowed on your property. And trust me when I tell you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you don't want this person inspecting your property. And the idea of, well, that could blow up the whole deal, because what if the buyers only want to use that inspector? Yeah, we had that happen. And our answer to our sellers was, it doesn't matter whether they choose to bow out then or later, because if he comes and inspects your property, you won't get to a closing. It was like his whole purpose in life was to make sure that he found things to allow things not to close, right? So we would just have those conversations, and the sellers would agree. And I don't know if the inspector is still working on it. That's a great question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I can look him up and tell you tomorrow. So the idea of having those conversations up front and making some clear decisions, to me, helps the seller, and that's what you're there to do. If the buyers want to think it's weird, or if the buyer's agent wants to think that there's something suspicious going on and we may be contacting, like we said before, at some point you can't live in a world of paranoia, right? Because nothing gets done. So they have a right to feel that way and think that. I'm still going to ask the question. Does that help, Victoria? Oops.
Okay, I think I'm on mute. Do you hear me, Rick? Yeah?
Yes, you're good now.
Okay. Now, my question is, it's allowed. Yeah, they can't blame me. For not allowing a certain inspector to do the inspection. I mean, not allowing, but telling them that, well, we can't accept it, right?
Well, so again, it's not your decision, it's the seller's, right? The seller has to be on board with that. So the seller is now saying to the potential buyer, we'd love to entertain your offer. We'd love to have you buy this house. We're just unwilling to have that inspector come and inspect the house. So we can do one of two things. You can find a new inspector, or you can not buy the house. Your choice.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Now, again, that happened with one inspector over a span of 20 years. It's the only time we ever took that action, and it happened. We took that action because it was just proven to us time and time again that this guy was just bad news, right? So I don't necessarily expect that that's prevalent in the industry again today, because it wasn't prevalent in the industry for the last 20 years. It was just this one person. However, if you have an experience and your sellers are in agreement with it, you could certainly have those conversations. So number 12, once you have the information above, prepare a contract information sheet, share it, and then get all the other supporting documents to your attorney. Number 13, all of your documents also need to go to the MCA. Now, when we finally launch foundational services, which should be in the next 2 or 3 weeks, for those of you who don't choose to upload your own documentation to Command, we will now be offering that service for you. So we're going to be walking you through what that process looks like, right? What you have to get to whom, so that everything just goes up into Command and gets submitted for compliance on your behalf. However, some of you will choose not to have that, use that office service and do it yourself. You have 3 days from the accepted offer to get all that documentation in. Number 14, once the inspection dates are set, be certain to inform the seller. I speak from experience. I know that sounds ridiculous, but as you know, we keep talking about growing a volume business, and as you continue to scale, you have more and more and more things that you have to remember. And I had a phone call one morning at about 8:45 from one of my seller clients who said, "Hi, Rick, it's Joanna." And I said, "Hi, Joanna, how are you?" And she said, "Well, that depends. I can tell you I'm in my nightgown." And I thought, okay, this is a bizarre start to a call. Like, why is she telling me this? I'm in my nightgown and I'm feeding my 3 small children breakfast. They're all in their pajamas. And I have an entire posse of people on my front porch ringing the doorbell telling me that they have an inspection scheduled. I thought, well, yeah, I think that's right. And I think I probably forgot to tell you. And I had. It was totally my fault. So oh my goodness. You know what? A, I'll be right there. B, tell me, like, I will own this issue. Tell me how you'd like me to solve it. And she said, you know what? I will figure it out. If they can give me a half hour, I will figure it out and get me and the kids out of here. And she did. And so I think I sent them flowers or bought them dinner or something ridiculous. But the point is, if you have a checklist, it's on this checklist so that you're just making sure every time you're delivering the right information to the right people. If it can happen to me during my growth, it can happen to you, right? So remember that you have to make sure that everyone knows that these things are scheduled. I told you day one that I have made every possible mistake there is to make in real estate, right? It makes me uniquely qualified to sit in front of you and help you not make these mistakes, because I have made every single one of them. And that was one that I'm not terribly proud of, and yet it is a good illustration of making sure that your communication systems are in place to not allow that to occur. Yes, Margaret.
Does the seller's agent attend the inspection, or were you just doing damage control in that instance?
Well, so as a listing agent, I never went to the inspections.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
I didn't even go and drop by. I know some listing agents who kind of drop by. To be frank, I am available on the telephone. I'm more than happy to check in if the seller is really pushing that. You know, some sellers kind of read you the riot act when you say, you know, no, I don't attend. Well, who's there representing my interests? You know, the answer is the house, right? The house is there representing you. And this is a time that the buyers get to have their professionals without you or me or anybody peering over their shoulder. They get to live in the space to figure out how to use your house, because that's the idea of an inspection, right? The idea of an inspection is that a professional can come in and show the new buyers how to utilize all the systems and structure in the new house. Please make note of that, because Margaret typed it in before, right? The inspections are not designed to find stuff wrong. Inspections are not designed as a way to figure out how not to buy the house. Inspections are not designed as another round of negotiations. Inspections are designed so that the buyers of the property who are buying a used piece of property can have professionals come in and tell them how to use it. During the course of that, sometimes you might find stuff that we have to talk about, but that's not the main reason we do inspections. And I think we have to be really, really cautious about how we're guiding clients forward with why inspections actually happen, right? Starting with the sellers so that they have an expectation about what's about to happen, and the buyers who also then have a different expectation about what this is all about.
Can I ask a question?
Oui, madame. Yes, Victoria. Oh, you muted yourself again.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
What shall we do with the seller's agent? If seller's agent is came and sometimes they don't stop talking even, or just stay there silently, do we have any rights in this situation? talking or not talking seller's agent?
Yeah, great question. So there are some seller's agents who clearly have not a whole lot else to do, and or don't have great scripts or ways to explain to their seller client that that's not how this is done, and show up, right? And so when it would happen to me, if they were just there, you know what, I would just pull my buyers aside and say, look, every once in a while the seller's agent shows up. Please don't allow that to distract you from what you're here to do. The good news is if there's any specific questions, we may have a faster answer because she or he is here, right? So I would just spin it positively so that the buyers weren't weirded out, right? The worst thing you can do is pull your buyers aside and say, do you believe this woman? I can't believe it. You know, this is a horrible thing. I don't know who to call, you know, where's the police when you need them, right? It just makes more drama. So I would always spin it positively. And then I would have a conversation with the list agent to say, hey, you know what, curious, do you plan on staying the whole time? Is that something the sellers have asked you to do? Just recognize that the buyers are looking to have their time in the house. And so if you wouldn't mind kind of keeping the conversation to a minimum, if you want to hang over there at the dining room table and do some work, that's awesome. If you want to hang outside in your car and make some phone calls, we can certainly come out and ask any questions that we might have, right? I kind of give them a role, right? And that role is stay over there and stay out of our way without saying stay over there and stay out of our way.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So number 14. Nope, number 15. You do have to report the property on the MLS. This says 48 hours. That has now changed. So cross that out on your list. That is now 24 hours, right? Status changes in the MLS are required within 24 hours. That includes you putting the property to either show or deposit. Show or deposit is going to be determined by the sellers based on whether or not they are expecting additional showings or want additional showings. If they don't, move it straight to deposit. That also stops the clock ticking and improves the days on market for your stats later on, just by the way, right? If they are expecting additional showings or would like additional opportunities while the inspections are happening, then it can be moved to show. Just do know that there are sites like Zillow that will plaster on those show properties, seller is accepting backups, right? Which sometimes freaks the buyers out and sometimes even freaks the sellers out. Do note that we have investigated whether or not they have a right to do that. And the answer based on MLS rules is yes, they do, because the rules for show are different than deposit. They are not allowed to do that if the property is under deposit, but under show they are, because the definition of show is we are looking to show the property and perhaps accept backup offers. Okay. There's a long, Alex, I was told to never show the entire report. So Alex, we're gonna get to that on the buy side. Alex is talking about sharing the report with the listing agent. And so that's really more on the buy side. So I'm gonna save that for our buyer conversation. If that's all right with you. And I agree, sharing the whole report is unnecessary. Number 16, as the listing agent, you could stop by the inspection. Again, for me, it was maybe just a call, right? And frankly, I would have my assistant call during the home inspection, right? If we knew the inspection was from 10 until 1, I wouldn't call myself. I had my assistant call to just check in with the buyer's agent to make sure everything was going okay, right? So you get to choose your poison. You can pop in just to say hi and see how things are going. You can choose not to and make a phone call. You can have someone that you pay go ahead and make that phone call. But if you're going to show up, like 10 minutes is way long enough, right? Because then you're overstaying your welcome. Number 17, at this point, you'll need to keep all parties in action. So as listing agent, you're now spinning all the plates, right? Set a schedule for yourself to be in constant contact at least every few days with your seller clients, with the buyer's agent, with the seller's attorney, And so what are you in communication about? Like, what are all the plates that are spinning? So you want to be certain that you have valid information about where the contract is, right? Is another contract being written, or are you using the one that the offer was presented on? If a new one's being written, has it been written? Has it been sent to the buyer's attorney for review? Have the buyers signed it? Has it come back? Have the sellers signed it? Do you have a full-blown contract, or are you still working off of an offer to purchase that may or may not be binding, right? You need to be handling all those steps and making sure that everyone's taking the steps necessary. Having conversations with the buyer's agent about where the buyer's mortgage stands. Have they made a formal application? Where does the appraisal stand? Any issues that are coming up? Any documentation issues? Is there any way I can help? And then, of course, your sellers. Checking in on them, seeing how things are going. Answering any questions. Making sure they know when the appraisal is, when the inspections are, right? So all those different plates that you're spinning. Please note that at some point as a listing agent, it seems like your job is to make sure everybody else is doing their job. And if it feels that way to you, then you're doing everything right. Because at this point in a transaction, a listing agent's job is to make sure that all the plates keep spinning. Right? I had an agent about 2 years ago who came to me and said, I am so frustrated. I just had a transaction nearly fall apart. Minimally, it's going to be delayed by 30 days for a closing. And I said, oh my goodness, well, what happened? And she said, well, apparently the tenants who were in the house were supposed to be given a 30-day notice for the closing, and that didn't happen. And I said, oh my goodness, well, I'm curious, when was it known that the tenants needed a 30-day notice? She said, well, when the sellers accepted the offer, right? They had month-to-month tenants in there who needed 30 days notice to be out. And I said, well, I'm curious, did that include you? And she said, well, yeah, I mean, I knew about it, but the sellers never bothered to let the tenants know. I said, well, did you remind the sellers? And she said, well, no, but minimally their attorney should have certainly done that. And it was funny because we went through all the other players in the transaction. And in this moment of emotion, she was unwilling to look in the mirror and say, you know what? There's probably one person who could have solved all of this. Had I just made a note and either reminded the sellers or reminded their attorney or both, we'd be having a closing in 48 hours instead of now having to wait 30 days and have everything all upended. Because then the buyer's mortgage rate lock was expiring. So now there was an issue. The sellers were going to have to cover the extension cost. And like stuff happens when things don't go as planned. And the reality is, you as the listing agent, guess what? You get to take full 100% credit when things go right and full 100% responsibility when things go wrong. So make sure that you understand that there's all those plates that need to keep spinning and that it is your job or the job of your office. And when I say your office, I mean your organization, right? If you have an assistant, well, maybe the assistant's making those phone calls. If you have a transaction manager, maybe that's being handled by someone who's not specifically you. It may just be maybe members of your organization. And if you are a solo agent, guess what? That is you. Number 18, once inspections are done, you can expect to hear from the buyer's agent hours or so regarding any items that might need to be addressed. Set expectations with the buyer's agent about when you will hear from them, and if they don't call, proactively call them, right? And that's really important. I want to be clear about that, right? If Margaret brings me an offer and then goes, we accept it, and her buyers do their inspections. When I call Margaret after the inspections are done and say, hey, how'd they go? And Margaret says, things seems okay. We expect everything back within the next, 2 to 3 days. Great. I'm curious. Today is Wednesday at 5:14. when is it do you think I can expect to hear from you with any items that might need to be addressed? Or the all clear. I want Margaret to know that I'm expecting an answer, and I'd like her to know when she thinks she's going to give that to me. So maybe she says, you know, my hope is by Friday at this time, certainly by Saturday. Great. So Friday at 5 o'clock, if I haven't heard from Margaret, guess what? I'm making a phone call. Hey, Margaret, just checking in, wanted to see where we stand on 123 Main Street and any inspection items or the all clear. Are you prepared to give either yet? And if not, what are we waiting on? Right? Be proactive. I can't tell you how many times I hear people not make proactive outreach about that and assume that because they haven't heard from somebody that everything must be fine. And they've now had a conversation with the sellers and the seller's attorney. Nope, never heard from anyone. You know, it's been 72 hours. I haven't heard, so I guess we're all good. And guess what happens in 96 hours? Like the you know what hits the fan, because now all of a sudden there's this big long list, right? So be really cautious around that. Take action, be proactive, and ask people when you'll hear back from them. That's not being pushy and rude. As a matter of fact, what I find is that when I do that, I still do that today. I do that in my own businesses. I do that in my dealings with people on the outside. I ask when I'm going to hear back, and then I make follow-up phone calls. I find that for the most part, it helps people stay on top of things if they're not naturally good at that themselves, because I'm enabling them to create a structure that maybe they wouldn't have created for themselves. So now hopefully Margaret's writing in her book, okay, call Rick by 5 p.m. on Friday. At minimum, I've planted a seed in her head that there's an expectation in the next 48 hours that we're going to hear back. Right? Mm-hmm. What do you got, Margaret?
So quick question for you. So if something comes up in the inspection and you're on the listing side, so for example, there's asbestos or maybe there's some questionable electricity, what is the listing agent's involvement? So like, do they pass it on and say, listen, you need to hire an electrician to check this out? Should we take that on to find an electrician to do it? Like, how does that work?
So do you mean, keep asking me that question. Do you mean, are you as the listing agent hiring people?
Well, or just making recommendations. So for my White Plains listing, there may be asbestos. So the family doesn't really live in the area. They don't know anybody. I don't know anybody there. But so I'm like, do I find recommendations? I don't want to shove it off on them, but I also recognize it's not my job to be running around hiring contractors. So how would you handle that?
Yeah, so it's a really great question. And I'm going to not use your example, and then I'll come back to your example, right? Because your example may be more of an anomaly than not, right? Generally speaking, and here's why it's a great question. You don't get, what's the best way to say this so that I don't get myself in trouble? There are ways to be a listing agent that allow you to grow and have a volume business. There are also ways to be a listing agent that will never allow you to grow. And so part of what Margaret's referring to is if everything becomes your job and you're doing that because you think that's a level of customer service that will allow you to grow, that's a catch-22. Because if you're providing that level of customer service and not asking the sellers to be involved, remember, most people want to be in partnership with you, right? Most people want a word, they want involvement. That's not everybody, but most people are looking for some kind of involvement, right? The way I used to address that was, if we needed to, if something with the electrical panels was brought up in the inspection, we would review it with the sellers and then ask the question, I'm curious, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, who is your electrician? Oh, it's Maria Smith. Great, would you do me a favor and give her a call and see if she could come out and address some of these issues? I'm gonna leave that in your court. Right? I would just be clear with them and have a conversation around who they know, who they have, and what needs to be done. so that I'm not necessarily doing that, right? Because if you take on all those roles and now you're the one getting everybody to do the work and meeting people at the house to get estimates and all this stuff, and trust me, there are a lot of people in the industry, there are a lot of people in our offices today who think that's their job. I am here to tell you that that's not really part of the job description. You're making that, that's like the busy work side of things that some people feel like they need to do because it makes them feel busy and important. I will tell you what it doesn't do is make you more and more profitable, because at some point you can't grow, right? You're giving so much of you that there's no more of you to go and take new listings, right? Am I making sense? So that's where leverage comes in. If you choose to have that be part of your value proposition, and you've chosen not to have you be the one doing that, perhaps part of your assistant's duties are to handle those kinds of things for the seller. I'm not saying you shouldn't handle them for the seller. I'm saying you need to make a choice about how you spend your time. And my choice as a listing agent was to have the seller be involved in that portion of that program as often as possible. Now, in Margaret's scenario that she put on the table, where the house is vacant, the people aren't here, right? She doesn't know the area all that well. They're no longer there, right? So maybe what you need to do in that scenario is ask someone who does know the area well and maybe be a little bit more involved. But that's more of an anomaly than it is the everyday. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and that's what I did. I got some recommendations from the buyer's agent and just passed them on.
Yeah, perfect, right? So just be careful about how you're balancing what it is you do. I will tell you, and this is just like a pet peeve of mine, and I'll share it with you. If it were me, oh man, I always like walk this close to the line, but that's okay. Just don't ever cross it, right? People ask me all the time, when do I know I should be hiring an assistant? And I will tell you that if I could do my real estate, if I had a do-over on my real estate career, my assistant would have been hired. I hired my assistant about 18 months into my career. If I had a do-over, the main thing I would do differently, well, there's two things. The first thing I would do differently is I wouldn't have gone the route of discount commissions for more signs. I would have recognized my value earlier than I did, right? And built a better value proposition and sold myself better based on a better value proposition. So that's one thing I would do differently. The second thing I would do differently is after the first 90 days or so, I would be looking around for my first admin hire. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to find a $40,000 or $50,000 a year person who's sitting in a chair next to me. There are lots of ways for you to have leverage that don't cost a lot of money. Virtual leverage is very popular and works, right? There's a book. Let's see if I can find it real quick. It's called. It's written by a guy named Pat Hyben. Oh, I can't find it. It's written by a guy named Pat Hyben, who was a RE/MAX agent in Maryland before he moved him and his team over to Keller Williams probably a decade ago. And he wrote this book called 6 Ways to 7 Figures or something like that. And in it, he describes his ascent from entering the real estate industry to, and I think when he came to Keller Williams, he had a 40-person team. For all intents and purposes, he was an office, right? He was his own kind of office. And one of the things he says in that book is, you know what, I realized really quickly that what I was good at was finding appointments, converting those appointments, and going and actually writing contracts with buyers and sellers. He said, I was terrible at all the rest of it. So I just went, he didn't hire one administrative person, he hired 2 before his first year was up. And what's interesting is that when you do that, you now all of a sudden set a bar for your income, right? As a business owner, you now have to meet payroll. What fascinates me about real estate agents is that they don't look at themselves as their sole employee from their CEO hat. And so therefore, if they don't meet payroll in their first year, it somehow is okay because it's only me. I would offer to you that that's not acceptable, right? Whether you, like when I got into real estate, I had to make money. Like I had to support my family and I had a mortgage to pay, and one of my 2 children had been born, right? So I had to make money. If that's not your scenario, I would also challenge you that as a business owner, right, the purpose of business is profit. So if you're not going to be profitable, what's the point of owning your own business, right? You can do other things that aren't profitable. So just something to think about. I have no idea why we're talking about this. I think Anna had a question first, and then we'll go to Victoria.
So going back to when they do the inspections and the buyer comes back to the seller saying that they need something urgently to be done, like a leaking in the house, that is something that is okay to request for them to have it done before the closing?
So I'm sorry, you kind of went in and out during the middle of that. So just ask it one more time, so I'm sure I understand the question.
So it is on the report, on the inspection, the report, there say something that needs to be addressed immediately, something like a leak in the house, like one of the pipes is leaking, and the buyer would like the seller to fix that before the closing. Is that something reasonable that the buyer can ask and the seller has to complete before the closing date?
Okay, got it. So let's that's a great question that actually brings us to another topic, right? In that scenario, if there really was a leak, one would think that the sellers would want to address the leak in the house that they're living in anyway, right? So in that particular scenario, again, buyers can ask for anything. Buyers can ask for whatever they choose to ask for. Let's have a quick discussion about what the seller's responsibility is. What do the sellers have to address in terms of inspections?
Nothing.
So Elena says nothing. We can stop right there because that's the right answer.
Yeah, nothing, yeah.
Right? We live in an as-is state. And so a lot of times, and I commend you guys because a lot of times the answers that I get when I ask that question is, oh, well, minimally all the health and safety items, well, they have to do the radon because that's a law. They have to do this, they have to do that. That is simply not true, right? In certain states, yes. In ours, no, right? In New Jersey, my in-laws lived in New Jersey, and when we sold my father-in-law's house, there was a whole list of things that the state required be done. Like, when the inspection happened, there was no choice. You had to do this, 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 and this because the state required it. Some states require sellers to bring things up to code before they transfer the property. In Connecticut, nothing, as is. Radon is high, great. They can do it or not. There's tripping hazards or there's issues with the foundation, they can do it or not, right? So sellers always have a choice in an as-is state what they may address. Now, the practical side of that, of course, is that if in fact the radon comes in high, it will likely come in high with any buyer. And so any buyer may well continue to request that the sellers do it. So at some point, there are certain things that sellers kind of throw up their hands and say, well, if this is going to be an impediment to almost any buyer we have come through, maybe we should just address it. But they're not, that's not a requirement. They don't have an obligation to do so. Especially when the market is moving this quickly. I've seen more and more sellers say, you know what, we choose you. So Eric, your buyers are the ones, they get the house. Please note, you can certainly do inspections, expect nothing from us on the tail end. They can do their inspections for informational purposes only. They can learn how to use the house. And if they find things wrong, they can certainly feel free to fix it after they close, but don't have an expectation to come back to us. And sellers in the driver's seat today are getting away with that more and more and more and more and more, right? But it's really important to remember, both as a listing agent and a buyer's agent, that in the state of Connecticut, we live in an as-is state. Sellers have no obligation to address anything from any inspection. They don't have to bring things to code. They don't have to do any of those things that you might think they have to do. Really important. Thank you. Does that answer that, Anna? Excellent.
Yes, it did.
Victoria, and then we're going to go to Alex.
Yeah. Well, I have a topic about selling agents and buyer agent. A bit off topic, but could be interesting because I was representing buyer in a more expensive transaction in Greenwich, and I made a mistake and allowed my buyer to go and see swimming pool without me. And since that time, seller's agent was all the time contacting my buyer, who was extremely loyal to me. We still didn't buy, so hopefully with Kelly Williams we'll buy a good house. And he was contacting my buyer all the time, and I was telling him, hey, you represent seller, I represent buyer. Let's stick to this kind of roles, yeah? And he kept saying, you know what, seller asked me to go just to cut all middle people. And I told him, you know, seller asked you, but there are rules, explain it to the seller, and still it continued. So what's your opinion?
Question first, is this particular buyer a signed buyer client of yours?
No, elaborate, please. What do you mean?
So, I mean, do you have a buyer contract with the buyer?
Yes, yes, he's already inside. We just lost the house because Tony made a mistake. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so if there's an agency agreement, right, and that agency agreement one time should be communicated to the listing agent to make sure that there's a reminder that this is a buyer who was contracted with me and my firm. If that particular listing agent decides to ignore that, I would call them out on it the first time, and the second time, I would go immediately to their broker.
Okay.
See, to me, there's a no tolerance policy in my world for that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Because that's like the decay of real estate civilization. If we start allowing things like that to happen, right, we become what so many outside of our industry think we are, which are these, used car salesmen-y, ruthless, doesn't matter, no ethics, no rules, Wild West, people who will do or say anything, to make a deal. And we're not that. And so I believe that I had two outbound phone conversations with brokers last week for that exact same thing. Because after the agent went to the broker, it still didn't stop. So they came to me and said, I don't know what else to do. And I said, okay, well, you know what? I will take a swing at the broker. And I said to the broker, look, here's the deal. We're giving you one last opportunity to have a conversation with your rogue agent before it goes to the board. And if everyone wants to waste their time with complaints and bringing in boards and ethics and all this stuff, then that's fine. Just control the people that are under your license.
Exactly.
And it finally did stop. It finally did stop. So my personal opinion is they get one get out of jail free card on that, with a reminder to say, maybe you forgot, but just as a reminder, there's a signed agency agreement between me and this person. So that person is now represented by a firm. You contacting them directly could be considered tortious interference with an existing agency relationship. If you'll use that line, it's scary enough to most real estate agents that they may think twice.
What was the adjective? What kind of interference?
Tortious, like a tort, T-O-R-T, right?
T-O-R-T.
Yeah, so it's tortious interference with an existing agency relationship.
Let me write it down.
Yeah. Somebody can pop that. Yeah, thank you, Alex. It's right in the chat, Victoria, if you want to check it out.
Thank you.
Alex, and then I think we're almost done for the night. Oh no, we got time. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, you thought you were getting out free. I just had a buried oil.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that was me. I muted you. Sorry, unmute. Sorry
Hi,
about that.
I'm back.
Yes.
I'm awfully dark. I just had a lovely buried oil tank experience on a listing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm going to have the opportunity to go back and do it over because our buyers did not. And it really set the buyer like running with their hair on fire. And the seller was not particularly interested in any amelioration as far as the tank. And I thought that was a pretty interesting scenario.
Yeah, it may end up being a foolish decision on the part of the seller not to step up and into that, because that is one of those. So it was an oil tank that was buried, that was discovered, that either they didn't know about. Did the sellers know about it?
Oh yeah, no, they put it in, and they're very proud of their participation in that.
Okay. And so when you say they put it in, did they put it in 1972, or did they put it in like recently? Okay, so they put it in kind of before buried oil tanks were kind of frowned upon, or just before buried oil tanks were frowned upon. Yeah. So yeah, that is an interesting one, and so that's definitely a conversation with sellers. To simply say, unfortunately, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, in the intervening 22 years, here's what's occurred with buried oil tanks, right? They went from being the best idea since sliced bread to being the bane of a homeowner's existence. And unfortunately, what you're experiencing right now is not just these buyers. It's likely to be almost any buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And so we probably need to be prepared to take a different step forward. We can certainly see if we can find buyers who will accept testing that it's not leaking, but those buyers are getting fewer and further between. And I will tell you, if you're waiting around for those buyers, like look at your calendar, because we may be here a while, like years. Because most attorneys nowadays, and even some mortgage companies, won't write a loan or won't allow buyers to sign a contract to purchase a house with a buried oil tank. And the sellers get adamant, right, to say, well, but it's not leaking. I get it. And yet no one, it's like musical chairs. No one wants to be the person left standing when it does start leaking. And so if your buyers purchase this home and they're here for as long as you are, can you see that they feel like at some point this may become their problem? And they're not looking to have it be their problem. They're looking for it to be your problem. And so from a responsibility perspective, do you have to do it? No. You may find yourself with an unsaleable home, and you'll have to determine whether or not that's acceptable to you. That's kind of the only conversation, because you're right. Buried oil tanks have gone from thumbs up to run in the opposite direction very quickly. Right? Okay.
I think I did, and I think I got them. I will have gotten them to both agree to help each other out with it.
Well, good. And in a scenario where the buyer and the seller can't agree to move forward with the removal and a replacement, awesome. If a buyer runs in the opposite direction, I mean, for me, if a seller has a buried oil tank, to me, one of the preparatory activities before the house goes on the market is you yank that sucker out and you put a new one in the garage or in the basement, right? Depending on where there's room. And the conversation that you guys can have around that, whether it's at a spot where Alex is at or it's beforehand, can simply be, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, again, you can explain the shift in buried oil tanks. And perhaps when you purchased this home, or even worse, when you put it in, right? If it was your pride and joy 22 years ago, right, it's now the bane of everyone's existence. Sorry about that. Here's what I want you to consider. Let's go and have you call your oil company or remediation company, whoever's going to do it, right? And let's get a number and attach a number to that. Because a lot of times sellers don't want to move forward because it's kind of like roofs, right? People say roof and everyone says, oh my God, $20,000. Well, that's not oftentimes true. Sometimes a roof is $3,000, or sometimes a roof is $7,000, or sometimes a roof only needs to be patched in a small portion, right? But the horribilization, right, of a roof becomes $20,000. Buried oil tanks are the same. So let's quantify it. And when they see that it's probably $3,500 without a leak, right, or maybe it's $4,000 to pull it and put a new one in and do whatever, then you get to have a conversation. Look, if we do this ahead of time, you can negotiate from the perspective of attempting to obtain that $4,000 back. You can just, if you were willing to sell your house for $500,000, well, now you can just take a stand and sell it for $504,000. And you don't have to have a big conversation around it, right? It just becomes a distraction for a buyer. And so part of our job up front is to help sellers make decisions that remove distractions for buyers. It doesn't make the house worth more per se. Please don't hear me saying that, because I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if the sellers will take a stand ahead of time and get that done, they can just make smarter decisions about what they say yes to and what they say no to moving forward. Make sense? All righty. Dan.
Yes, sir. If this is kind of a buyer question, though, if I bring buyers to a home and I notice that there's an in-ground buried oil tank because it's oil and there's no oil tank in view, is that something you might have a conversation with the seller's agent right away?
So it's something that I would certainly point out to the buyers to say, hey, you know what, if this is the house for you, one of the things we need to get some more info on is, where's the oil tank? Because it's an oil burning furnace. And look, there's two little lines that go right to the wall and stop. My bet is they continue on the other side, right? And so you get to have that conversation first with the buyers, then certainly, if it's not disclosed anywhere, with the sellers to say, with the seller's agent to say, hey, funny thing, we were down in the basement on Sunday afternoon and we saw the oil lines leave the oil burner and not go anywhere except outside. What can you tell us about where they end up? Right, and so you're now uncovering some information.
Thank you.
Yeah, the answer is absolutely, right? That's where your eyes become really important, because a typical home buyer may not spot that, right? Your eyes may spot it, and since you work for the buyer, you bring that up right away, right? Here's something we'll need to figure out, right? And here's what you don't do. Oh my goodness! Stand back, everyone! Stand back! There's oil lines. They go into the wall. That means there may be, I think we should get off the property immediately. Quick. Call the EPA or something. Right? It's not a hair on fire drama moment. But it is absolutely we need to get some information on that. It should be in the disclosures. Oh, I think I woke Anna up. Were you nodding off there, Anna Holinsky? Oh, my goodness, he yelled. It should be in the disclosures, and yet it sometimes is not, right? So then we get to ask some questions around it. All righty. All right, let's keep finishing this sucker up. Where are we? So we're negotiating inspection items. We got through that. So you can see 22, 23, 24. That's all the check-ins, right? You're checking in with all those people, seeing where all the issues are at, and having making sure everything is moving forward. Number 25, put a star next to 25 because it's easy to skip over it, and some people think it's kind of dopey to have there. Except I will tell you, I've been doing this long enough to know that this is one of the most important things on this list. Encourage your sellers to start packing as early as you possibly can. As soon as, I mean, frankly, I actually started it at the appointment, like my initial appointment. I would just start having them thinking about packing. When I was going through, like doing the walkthrough, we'd open a closet and say, hey, you know what? Just a thought, if it's possible to start packing before even our next appointment, you'll just be that much further ahead. One of the things that buyers like to see are large open areas for storage. So if you have opportunities to start packing up some of the things in your closets, to start packing up some of the things in your garage or some of the things in your basement, right? Maybe get a pod and start filling that up, or using one bay of the garage for your boxes. I used to prep them way early and then keep mentioning it. Certainly once there's an offer that's been accepted and you're going through all these motions, you need to remind them again, it's time to start packing. I have spent way too many moments on the telephone with freaked out sellers who are heading to a closing in 3 hours and like half their furniture is still in the house, right? Because they just didn't plan on enough time, right? Guess what? If you live someplace long enough, you got a whole lot of crap you either have to pack up or throw out. And both of those things take time, right? Both of them take time.
Yes, I just had to say something fast. I helped my dad move out of our lake house this summer that we've had since I'm in 10th grade. And they put so much crap in storage. And now I say, you know, I open the doors, I'm like, one day this could be mine.
Yeah, see that? Make sure it's all in the will, Mara. You don't want to miss out on any of that. It's true, right? And so don't forget, you know, remind them about the attic, right? Have you emptied the attic, right? For a lot of people, they forget about that, and then it's a scramble a couple of days before the closing. I encourage sellers when we encourage them to begin packing. Hey, I'm curious. I have a company down in Wilton that has very reasonable roll-off containers. Would you like their number? In other words, go get yourself a big old container and have it sitting in the driveway so you can pitch a whole bunch of stuff. You don't have to worry about packing it, right? Moving is a perfect time to get rid of all the crap you don't need anymore. So, you know, a dumpster, I said a container, a dumpster is what that is, for those of you who don't know what that is. So once 26, once you've signed a contract and have agreed to all inspection items and a mortgage that is cruising along, you may fall into a period of time where not much is occurring, right? So for those of you who have been through this at least once, you know that at some point, there's a little bit of a lull in all the activities, right? The mortgage seems to be working fine. The appraisal's been done. The inspection items are all been negotiated. The contracts are all signed. You know, everything seems to be cruising along just fine. And now you have this 30 or 40-day period of time before the closing. And the idea is that's the perfect opportunity to set yourself apart and make sure that your seller clients know that they are more important to you than just a commission. Right? Because you're going to make sure that you have a system in place that has you talking to them every 2 or 3 days, even if there's nothing to say. Because minimally, you get to call them and say, hey, it's Thursday. What's happening? Here's the good news. It didn't snow today. Now, I'm just calling to see if there's anything that you need from me, anything I can help you with. How's the packing going? Do you need a resource for more boxes? Are you going to be doing that yourself or bringing in a moving company? Have you had the moving company come and quote yet? You know, did you like some? Right. So you're just developing all these conversations so that every 2 or 3 days you're still checking in and making sure that they are still facing forward and that you haven't gone missing. One of the best ways to show them that what they mean to you is a paycheck only is for you to disappear for a month and only resurface a couple of days before the closing. And a lot of people make a lot of mistakes in that period of time. And the mistake they make isn't by what they do, it's by what they don't do, right? So make sure you're staying connected during that period of time. Here's the other thing. If you really care about getting those clients to the closing table, checking in every 2 to 3 days, not only with the sellers, but minimally weekly with the buyer's agent, will solve so many issues at the closing because you'll know about them sooner, right? More constant communication allows anything that has to be troubleshot to come up earlier and you can just troubleshoot it. Number 27, keep the MCA in your office in the loop as to closing dates, right? I will say that they are good at just about everything they do. They're not really great at reading minds, right? So it is something that I encourage them to work on as often as possible, but they can't read your mind. And so if the closing date changes, you need to keep them updated so that they can continue to update their records, because they're going to be invoicing for your services, right? They issue the invoice for the services so that you can get paid at the closing table. They do that based on a system on how many weeks out from a certain closing your property is. If all of a sudden you have a closing move up 3 weeks, it is very possible that that invoice has not gone out yet because they still think it's 3 weeks away and it hasn't hit in their system yet. So you have to keep them updated so that they can do their job on your behalf and make sure that everyone has what they need. Yes.
Oh, what kind of documents do we need to send to the office? Oh, how early do we have to send those documents?
So great question. There are checklists inside of both .loop and command that will answer question number 1. Question number 2 is 3 days. When you take a new listing, your listing paperwork needs to be uploaded into command within 3 days of you taking the listing. And for a pending, whether you sell a listing or you sell a buyer, 3 days from full execution of whatever document has been fully executed, you need to get that documentation uploaded into command and submitted for compliance to the office.
Okay, thank you.
3 days. You're welcome. Ashley.
Hey, Rick. As somebody that's very freshly new to Keller Williams, if you, I was a little past 3 days getting some of the documents to the MC, but all of them were in DocuSign, but everything's been submitted. What's the penalty?
Well, the first time we let it go. The second time we ship you right back to Berkshire Hathaway.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. So right now, so it's a great question, right? Right now, there are no penalties, right? It's so interesting you asked me this question because I literally had a conversation with our leadership teams this morning in our 9:30 call around this very issue. Because when we run our pendings report, and then we run a pendings report from the MLS, what we're noticing, and we know why it's happening, it's because the market's moving very, very quickly, and many of you don't have additional assistance to make sure that the documentation is getting done as quickly as you're selling houses. So we totally get it, right? And we don't look to be unreasonable. So we're seeing the list in the MLS get far longer than what we actually have. There are some market centers in our region that have financial penalties put in place to make sure that the documentation comes in. That is, we do not have that, and I would love to never have that because I'd rather instead just operate in partnership and have everyone understand that there's a reason why the 3 days is the 3 days, right? And Margaret says death. No, I would never go that far. So the public humiliation maybe on a Zoom call, that might work.
Well, I'm publicly humiliating myself.
Yeah, that is true.
You know, I am very typically fast with getting it in. I just was navigating the system.
Yeah, and well, so of course, and so, you know, so recognize that when you're new to the company or new to the business, you know, we're certainly going to cut you some slack. The 3 days is there for a reason, because what we find happens is that if it doesn't happen in 3 days, it often also doesn't happen in 3 weeks, right? Because people then forget about it. And then we get phone calls on your behalf about the transaction. Someone will call and ask a question of the office about a transaction that we have no information on, and then everyone looks kind of dopey because nobody knows what the story is. So part of the reason that we're shifting to offering financial services, we're offering foundational services for everyone, which means paperwork management, right? We're setting up systems where we will take the paperwork management off of your plate if you so choose to use that, and upload those things into Command so that your compliance happens automatically, I mean, or as automatically as you get the documents to that gatekeeper, and then they take the steps forward, is because we'd rather you focus on the things that ultimately make you money, right? Doing paperwork and getting paperwork into the office doesn't really make you money. It is how you get paid, and yet it's not one of your dollar productive activities. So we're looking to offload that for you so that you don't have to worry about it. Some of you will think that's awesome. Some of you will freak out and say, how could I possibly let go of that? I understand both sides of it. Trust me when I tell you that at some point you can't grow without offloading some of that stuff. So will this be a paid system? So the people the Market Center will pay to do it will get paid. There will be no cost to any of you, right? It will be a Market Center service that comes at no cost. The foundational services piece, and that's uploading of listings into the MLS, as well as any pendings up into Command for compliance. So we're just working out the tail end of the structure on that. It's being beta tested next week with a couple of people, and we will likely roll that out after family reunion for everyone. So stay tuned for that. Does that answer that, Ashley?
Yes, I will never be late.
We appreciate that. We appreciate that. So once a closing date's been settled on, then you're going to kind of schedule things out for a week before the closing date, and then make sure that you're having, like 29 is kind of a system that you can use to just make sure that you're in constant communication, make sure that all the things that have to get done prior to the closing on the seller's side are done, right? Make sure that they're calling the utilities and letting the utilities know when they're going to be departing, calling to arrange for an oil tank reading if in fact it's oil heat, right? They have to stick the tank. Why do they do that?
They adjust that at closing?
Exactly right. The buyers will buy the oil that's in the tank at the closing, so they have to know how much oil is in the tank so they know what to charge the buyers, right? That's one of the apportionments that happens at closing. So you need to arrange, for the oil tank reading. And again, these are not necessarily things you're doing, but they are things that you're reminding the sellers need to be done, right? You may choose to offer that service or not. Again, I chose the service of making sure the sellers knew what they had to do, and then followed up to make sure they did it. Yes, Jerome.
I was answering your question about whatever you just asked. I was saying yes.
Oh, got it. Well, thank you for that. You were 100% right. Make sure they don't need to speak to their attorney. Make sure that they've taken care of their change of address, like with the post office. Make sure that they've thought about changing their address on their license, right? All different things. And I just gave you a bunch of those things so that you can stay in constant communication with the sellers and be of service to them as we lead up to the closing date. I always found that more constant communication leading up to the closing date allowed for less drama at the closing, because again, I'm talking to the sellers almost every day. So I understand where they're at. I understand where they're at packing. I understand their mental state. I understand if they're stressed, right? And can take appropriate action. 31, I will tell you as we tick out of time, we still do that. It's one of my favorite things to do for sellers. And that is ask them when move out day is and provide food. right? Minimally send a lunch over on moving day, whether they're doing it themselves or they're doing it with professionals. What we do is we just ask how many people will be there between the family and if there's professional movers, how many movers will be there? 4, great, and you're 4, excellent. We send lunch over for 8 or 9. Because we don't want, I have experienced this personally where we've hired professional movers. They're like half of my furniture is now out on the front lawn and it's 11:59 and the storm crowds are rolling in from the west. And you're looking at them saying, oh my goodness, we have to get all this furniture onto this truck before it starts to rain. And then at 11:59 and a half, they all get in the truck and start to drive away because it's lunchtime. Right? I don't know about you, but that makes me very anxious. Like, well, where are you going? Right? What about my furniture? So we just always send lunch over. I will tell you that over and above any service or closing gift or anything else that we've done for sellers, our sellers remember the fact that on moving day, we sent them lunch more than they remember anything else we do. We get more referrals from that because it's a stressful time for sellers. Think about it. The refrigerator's empty. There's no food. There's no plates. There's no forks, right? If they have kids, the kids are like running around with nothing to do. So it just takes one less thing to be anxious about off the list of things to be anxious about. And we find it happens, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be pizza and salad. We usually send a big, 2 3-foot heroes over if there's, 6 or 8 people from wherever a local deli might be. Send over a couple of 2 liters of soda, make sure that there's tons of plastic utensils and paper plates and you're good to go, right? Or take orders. If there's only gonna be 2 or 3 people, take orders. Where would you, we're gonna be ordering lunch from either here or here. What would you like? And then send that over. And then of course, take down all the lockbox and order the sign down, remove all of your marketing materials, make sure the sellers know when the buyer's agent will do the walkthrough so they're ready. Number 34 is dates this document, right? Go to the closing, because even before 10 and a half or 11 months ago when that all went sideways on us, most people weren't necessarily attending closings anymore, right? The days of the buyers and the sellers and their attorneys and their agents all sitting in one room together at a closing table are pretty much gone. That's just not the way it's done anymore. And yet, staying tight with the sellers around their closing to make sure that there's nothing that you can do will help. So it is 6:01, so I'm going to respect your time and call it a night on that. We will finish the last couple of things on the seller transaction tomorrow and then dive right into buyers. Have a lovely evening. It was, as always, a pleasure to spend time with you, and we will look forward to seeing you. I know tomorrow we have Patrick Woods as a special guest at our 9 o'clock call. You do want to listen to Patrick. Patrick is our Stanford team leaders coach. So Patrick is Steve's coach. He's awesome. He's a real estate agent. He's a market center owner. He's a coach. He's an all around great guy. And so tune in. He'll give us 15 minutes of fantastic stuff tomorrow morning at 9. Plus I have a fun video that I really like to start that morning off tomorrow. So we'll see you at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Love you guys. See you soon.
This is Adinka from Guaranteed Rate and GRA's marketing compliance team. I was just made aware that our accounting team still had not processed that ACH. We did a little digging, and I'm so